All right, here's part 2 of developing a kingdom culture inside your company. There are incredible definitions of culture and what that looks like and why you need it. We all know inside of companies, it's crucial to have develop a culture that's empowering and enabling, and it's a place of honor and so forth and so on. But I want to talk to you what a kingdom culture, in my perspective, in my experience, looks like, and how you can do that inside your company. First and foremost, I believe a kingdom culture starts with the foundation of love. What I mean by that is this, is that if you look at the definition of love inside 1 Corinthians, it talks about it's forgiving, it believes the best, it's not self-promoting, it's championing other people. And I want to encourage you that you don't dismiss that. And again, you might not go, quote, hey, in 1 Corinthians 13 it says, but if you can actually, that word love is thrown out so much all around that you could bring that into your team and say, hey guys, we want to create a place where people feel valued and loved and accepted. That word love is where we actually believe the best. We're forgiving. We're not holding grudges. And I believe obviously we know that's part of the kingdom. And I believe as you start there, and that's the core foundation, is like, I'm going to choose love over offense. I'm going to choose love over anger and frustration, over bitterness and resentment. That will be a key to unlock the door to continue to bring a culture where people are feeling valued and accepted. We'll talk more about that too. So I believe the first key is love. The second thing is, if you've been around certain circles, you've heard the term culture of honor. It is something that people are going after. If you've heard Danny Silk before, phenomenal books about it. He's done an incredible job defining it and implementing it in so many different, especially church circles. They just wrote a book called Business of Honor. Incredible, great book about the concepts and how you do it. What I do find is lacking a lot of times, not because of them, but in general, is people like, how do I develop a culture of honor or a kingdom culture inside my company? And I believe if you break down the culture of honor, what it actually means is this, is it means that people feel valued. You're actually celebrating who people are. You're championing who they are, not focusing on what you're not. However, here's the catch. So many people are like, well, that's great. I can celebrate people, I can champion, but I need them to work. So what does that practically look like when I have to fire somebody? What does it look like when they're not performing? So this is my perspective and what I've seen be successful in developing this culture of honor, where you're valuing people, you're creating a place of safety, you're creating a people of courage, you're encouraging them that they're courageous to go after things. You're creating a place where you're building powerful people. You're creating an environment of trust, a place where people feel like they belong. A place of vulnerability and authenticity and healthy and brave communication and connection. Those are big words, I understand. I'd love to break them down for you, what that looks like in your environment. But today, I'm trying to just highlight some of those things again. Inside this culture of honor, I believe those things are part of a culture of honor. And the problem that I find is that most people like, how do I do that inside my company while still holding people accountable? Those things are important. So I want you to make sure you start going after that. You're creating a place where people feel safe and valued, empowered, encouraged, that you're celebrating who they are, not focusing on what they're not. You are going after creating a powerful people that they make decisions and they're accountable for those decisions. They're healthy. You're working on brave and healthy communication. We're going to talk about that another time. Or authenticity and vulnerability. Those are core components of a culture of honor, which is part of a kingdom culture. But one of the gaps that I've found is people don't understand how to do that while keeping people to a place of accountability and performing. So I want to talk about accountability for a second, because a lot of times what happens is we go back to an old mindset of accountability, which for me, it was a heavy-handed perspective or mindset or definition. Listen, I'm here to hold you accountable. Don't mess up or else you're going to get in trouble. There's going to be consequences for your actions. If you mess up, this is what's going to happen. That's how I grew up understanding accountability. So there's a fear-based accountability. I want to kind of redefine it. For me, it's important that you have accountability inside a company and actually any organization. And accountability for me is knowing who they are, who they're called to be, and then calling them up to that place. So for example, if somebody, you've known that they're on time, they're champion people and they're fun to be around, or you know what their potential is. But what you've been experiencing for the last week, 2 months, 4 months, 6 months isn't up to that place, that's where you call them to be accountable to who they're really called to be. What that would look like for me is this. Hey, Joe, hey, I've watched you work, man, and you do a phenomenal job. You're excellent at this, this, and this. However, the last few months, every time I turn around, you're showing up late to work. You have a bad attitude, and the work quality is just like, it's junk. This doesn't make sense to me because I know what you can do, but it's not lining up. We're at two different places. What's going on? Just asking those questions, you're recalling and celebrating and honoring and valuing who he is or who he can be or what you've known him to be. But you're also explaining to him what you're experiencing. So out of that conversation, you're then able to help people unlock this this question or this place of an understanding of like, wow, I'm missing it. And you're able to help them discover what they need to do next. And they can, whether they recognize it or not, you're able to begin to walk them through the next steps. Okay, we got a problem then. We can't keep having this performance. So what are we going to do? And now what you're doing is you're creating ownership. You're creating a powerful people because you're putting the responsibility on them to be accountable for what they're going to do to change. So it might be Joe is going to say, you know what, you're absolutely right. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to set an alarm, or I'm going to show up every day with a good attitude. I'm going to change this. So he's beginning to set up an action plan. Great, Joe. That sounds awesome, I would say. And then I would say, okay, so what happens if you don't do this thing? Oh man, I don't know. Joe's like, I don't know what to do. I'm not sure what I need to do. At that point, I say, listen, Joe, if you continue to show up late, and you continue to show up in a bad attitude, what that's really communicating to me is that you really don't want to be here. Because if you wanted to be here, you'd be passionate about it. You'd be doing your job. You'd be performing well. You'd be showing up on time. So I'm expecting that's not going to happen. I can't wait to see what's going to happen over the next week. But if it continues to happen, what you're communicating to me is you really don't want to be here. This is not the place for you. Yeah, you're right. Okay, great. We're on the same page. Great. Let's check in a couple weeks to see how this is going. So what you did is you're holding them accountable again to who you've seen them and experienced them to be. And yet you're still honoring them and valuing them. But if they don't perform, they're not achieving what they're supposed to do, there's an accountability, and they are making their own choice. And they're doing. Now I understand there's things where people do something blatant and disrespectful. I think it's dishonoring if you don't hold them accountable and say, hey, listen, this is not allowed here. I'm sorry, we can't have this behavior. So for the sake of honoring my other teammates, my other employees, or whatever, my clients, we cannot have this behavior continue. So you need to leave. That is not dishonoring. There's a lot of people that have this mindset of like, I'm afraid to do that because that's not really honoring them. So I want to hopefully just me defining that and explaining that really breaks down the misconceptions of what it looks like to have a culture of honor inside your company and lose out on accountability, because you have to have the both and. And as you begin to create those places, it will help you have powerful people. You'll create a place where they can be vulnerable and they can be authentic. You could be the same thing, but you're helping them be powerful and making good choices while being accountable and get in ownership of their own actions. So it's amazing the turnaround you'll see what happens. So I hope those things help you. I'm going to continue in the next video of some other key components of the Kingdom culture.